Hey guys, what's up? This is honorableaggro, and we're back with some more Ranger's Apprentice. We're on Book 1, The Ruins of Gorlan, and we're on Chapter 3 now. In the last chapter, they were just starting the choosing. They have all the craft masters in there. Martin is still being authoritative. Baron's kind of snickering at him, rolling his eyes to the heavens and whatnot. We'll notice that Halt, the ranger, is standing behind the Baron to one side. And it kind of spooked him because he didn't see him come in. And yeah, so they're just going through the choosing now. They're each saying their name and what they want to be in. So they just did Horace. He got accepted to battleschool. So now we're going to move on to Alice, sorry. Who's next then? Martin was calling as Horace, grinning broadly, stepped back into the line. Alice stepped forward, gracefully annoying Martin, who had wanted to nominate her as the next candidate. Alice Mainwaring, my lord, she said in her quiet, level voice. Then, before she could be asked, she continued, I request an appointment to the diplomatic service, please, my lord. Arnold smiled at the solemn-looking girl. She had an air of self-confidence and poise about her that would suit her well in the service. He glanced at Lady Pauline. My lady, he said. She nodded her head several times. I've already spoken to Alice, my lord. I believe she will be an excellent candidate, approved and accepted. Alice made a small bow of her head in the direction of the woman who would be her mentor. Will thought how alike they were, both tall and elegant in their movements, both grave in manner. There we go, sorry. He felt a small surge of pleasure for his oldest companion, knowing how much she had wanted this selection. Alice stepped back into line, and Martin, not to be forestalled this time, was already pointing to George. That was the one I forgot last time, or that I forgot. Alright, so, right, you're next. Address the Baron, George stepped forward. His mouth opened and closed several times, but nothing came out. The other wards watched in surprise. George, long regarded by them as the official advocate for just about everything, was overcome with stage fright. He finally managed to say something in a low voice that nobody in the room could hear. Baron Arnold leaned forward, one hand cupped behind his ear. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that, he said. George looked up at the Baron and, with an enormous effort, spoke in just audible voice. George Carter, sir. Scribe school, sir. Martin, ever a stickler for the proprietaries, drew breath to berate him for the truncated nature of his address. Before he could do so, and to everyone's evident relief, Baron Arnold stepped in. Very well, Martin, let it go. Martin looked a little aggrieved. There we go, aggrieved. I'm sorry, guys. My brain is like at 90,000 miles an hour today, so bear with me just a little bit. But subsided. The Baron glanced at Nigel, his chief scribe and legal officer, one eyebrow raised in question. Acceptable, my lord, he said, adding, I've seen some of George's work, and he really does have a gift for calligraphy. The Baron looked doubtful. He's not the most forceful speaker, though, is he, scribe master? That could be a problem if he has to offer legal counsel at any time in the future. Nigel shrugged in the objection aside. I promise you, my lord, with proper training, that sort of thing represents no problem. Absolutely no problem at all, my lord. The scribe master folded his hands together within the wide sleeves of the monk-like habit he wore as he warmed to his theme. I remember a boy who joined us 7 years back, rather like this one here. As a matter of fact, he had that same habit of mumbling to his shoes. But we soon showed him how to overcome it. Some of our most reluctant speakers have gone on to develop absolute eloquence, my lord, absolute eloquence. The Baron drew breath to comment, but Nigel continued in his discourse. It may even surprise you to hear that as a boy I myself suffered from a most terrible nervous stutter. Absolutely terrible, my lord. Could barely put 2 words together at a time. Hardly a problem now, I see. The Baron managed to put in dryly, and Nigel smiled, taking the point. He bowed to the Baron. Exactly, my lord. We'll soon help young George overcome his shyness. Nothing like the rough and tumble scribe school for that, absolutely. The Baron smiled in spite of himself. The scribe school was a studious place where voices were rarely, if ever, raised, and where logical, reasoned debate reigned supreme. Personally, on his visits to the place, he had found it mind-numbing in the extreme. Anything less like a rough-and-tumble atmosphere he could not imagine. I'll take your word for it, he replied. Then to George he said, Very well, George. Request granted. Report to scribe school tomorrow. George shuffled his feet awkwardly. Mumble, mumble, mumble. He said, and the Baron leaned forward again, frowning as he tried to make out the low-pitched words. What was that? He asked. George finally looked up and managed to whisper, Thank you, my lord. He hurriedly shuffled back to the relative anonymity of the line. Oh, said the Baron, a little taken back. I think nothing of it now. Next is... Jenny was already stepping forward. Blonde and pretty, she was also, it had to be admitted, a little on the chubby side. But the look suited her, and at any of the castle's social functions, she was a much sought-after dance partner with the boys in the castle, both her yearmates in the ward and the sons of castle staff as well. Master Chubb, sir, she said now, stepping forward right to the edge of the Baron's desk. The Baron looked into the round face, saw the eagerness shining there in the blue eyes, and couldn't help smiling at her. What about him? He asked gently, and she hesitated, realizing that, in her enthusiasm, she had breached the protocol of the choosing. Oh, your pardon, sir. My Baron, your lordship, she hastily improvised, her tongue running away with her as she mangled the correct form of address. My lord, Martin prompted her. Baron Arl looked at him, eyebrows raised. Yes, Martin, he said. What is it? Martin had the grace to look embarrassed. He knew that his master was intentionally misunderstanding his interruption. He took a deep breath and said in an apologetic tone, I simply wanted to inform you that the candidate's name is Jennifer Dalby. Sir. The Baron nodded at him, and Martin, a devoted servant of the heavy-bearded man, saw the look of approval in his lord's eyes. Thank you, Martin. Now, Jennifer Dalby. Jenny, sir, said the irrepressible girl, and she shrugged reasonably. He shrugged reasonably. Jenny, then, I assume that you are applying to be apprenticed to Master Chubb? Oh, yes, please, sir, Jenny replied breathlessly, turning adoring eyes on the portly red-haired cook. Chubb scowled thoughtfully and considered her. Could be, he muttered, walking back and forth in front of her. She smiled winningly at him, but Chubb was beyond such feminine wiles. I'd work hard, sir, she told him earnestly. I knew you would, he replied with some spirit. I'd make sure of it, girl. No slacking or lollygagging in my kitchen. Let me tell you. Fearing that her opportunity might be slipping away, Jenny played her trump card. I have the right shape for it, she said. Chubb had to agree that she was well-rounded. Arnold, not for the first time that morning, hid a smile. She has a point there, Chubb, he put in, and the cook turned to him in agreement. Shape is important, sir. All great cooks tend to be rounded. He turned back to the girl, still considering. It was all very well for the others to accept their trainees in the wink of an eye, he thought, but cooking was something special. Tell me, he said to the eager girl, what would you do with a turkey pie? Jenny smiled dazzlingly at him. Eat it, she answered immediately. Chubb rapped her on the head with the ladle he carried. I meant, what would you do about cooking it? He asked. Jenny hesitated, gathered her thoughts, then plunged into a lengthy technical description of how she would go about constructing such a masterpiece. The other 4 wards, the Baron, his craftmasters, and Martin listened in some awe, with absolutely no comprehension of what she was saying. Chubb, however, nodded several times as she spoke, interrupting as she detailed the rolling of the pastry. 9 times, you say, he said, curiously, and Jenny nodded, sure of her ground. My mother always said, 8 times to make it flaky, and once for love, she said. Chubb nodded thoughtfully. Interesting, he said. Then looking up at the Baron, he nodded. I'll take her, my lord. What a surprise, the Baron said mildly, then added, very well. Report to the kitchens in the morning, Jennifer. Jenny, sir, the girl corrected him again, her smile lightening up the room. Baron Arnold smiled. He glanced at the small group before him. And that leaves us with one more candidate. He glanced at his list, then looked up to meet Will's agonized gaze, gesturing in encouragement. Will stepped forward, nervousness suddenly drying his throat so that his voice came out in barely a whisper. Will, sir. My name is Will. Alright, that does it for Chapter 3, guys. We'll move on to Chapter 4 in the next video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button down below, and we will see how many I can get on this one. So, alright, so we're almost done with the choosing, so we're going to get there, guys. These books just keep getting better and better, I promise. But hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one, and have a good night.